Hello. In today's video, I will be talking about the story of author Mary Shelley. She was best known for writing the novel Frankenstein, aka The Modern Prometheus, a novel that became one of the greatest works of English literature and a pioneer of the sci-fi genre. I've always been fascinated by her life. She was an outcast growing up, surrounded by great academic and creative minds, and dedicated her time reading and writing stories. So let's go back to the very beginning. Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin was born on the 30th of August, 1797, in London, England. Her mother was the famous author Mary Wollstonecraft, who wrote the book A Vindication of the Rights of Women in 1792, the classic manifesto of sexual equality. Mary Wollstonecraft is considered one of the founders of feminism. In her work, she argued that educating and empowering women would not only improve individual lives, but also strengthen society, marriages, and families. Mary's father was the well-known political writer William Godwin, who later wrote Caleb Williams, a novel often considered to be one of the first English detective novels. Unfortunately, her mother died a few days after her birth due to complications. Mary never really knew her mother, but held her close to her heart. As a child, she spent a lot of time by her grave. In 1801, Mary's father remarried and the family grew. Mary got two step-siblings, a sister, Jane, later called Claire, and Charles. Mary was 4 at the time, and her relationship with her stepmother was likely not the best. Mary only recorded negative memories of her stepmom. Her stepmother took a keen interest in her biological children's education, but did not care as much for Mary's. That, however, did not stop Mary from spending time in her father's bookshop, reading and writing short stories, and listening in to the many great minds visiting her father. As a child, I scribbled, and my favorite pastime, during the hours giving me for recreation, was to write stories. Mary published her first poem, Monsieur Nongtongpo, as a 10-year-old through her father's publishing company. Throughout her childhood, she was fighting for her father's attention, but was seemingly often alone. In 1814, one of her father's students took a keen interest in her, the romantic poet Percy Bysshe Shelley. Percy deeply admired Mary's father and was eager to be a part of the intellectual world. Percy came from a wealthy family that did not support his views of the world. At the time when Percy and Mary started to see each other, Percy was still married to his first wife, Harriet Westbrook, and they shared a child together. Despite this, Percy and Mary eloped later that year, causing an immediate scandal. They traveled to France, accompanied by Mary's stepsister Claire. However, due to the disapproval from their families, they fairly soon ran out of money and had to return to England. Mary was an early Goth in many ways, and one of the most shocking rumors about her is that she allegedly lost her virginity on her mother's grave. While this has never been confirmed, it has also never been disproven. Who knows, Mary did spend a lot of time there. Around 9 months later, in February 1815, Mary and Percy welcomed their firstborn child, Clara. Unfortunately, Clara did not live longer than just a few days, something that was beyond difficult for them, especially Mary. In the early summer of 1816, Mary, Percy, and Claire, who was now dating the poet Lord Byron, traveled to Geneva, Switzerland. They were invited by Lord Byron to visit him, together with another British writer and physician, Dr. John Polidori. They were staying at the Villa Diodati, located in Coligny on a hill with views over the lake and the Jura Mountains. However, that summer was far from sunshine and warmth. In fact, it became known as the year without a summer. The reason? A massive volcanic eruption from Mount Tambora in Indonesia the year before, which cast a shadow over the world. The days were spent indoors, and the group challenged each other to write ghost stories, and little did they know what stories would come out of this. Frankenstein was not the only successful story of the competition. Dr. Polidori's story, The Vampire, became the first vampire story in English literature. Mary did start writing Frankenstein in Geneva. However, it took another 18 months before she finished the novel. The first edition of Frankenstein was published anonymously, leading many to assume that Percy was the author since he had written the preface, and the book was dedicated to William Godwin. In the second edition, Mary was finally able to publish under her own name. Mary continued to write stories and lived with Percy until his death. They had more children, but only their youngest son, Percy Florence Shelley, survived to adulthood. At 24, Mary became a widow when Percy passed away during a sailing trip. Throughout her life, Mary worked hard while raising her son. She continued writing novels, including Valperga and the sci-fi novel The Last Man. She also dedicated time to promoting her late husband's poetry. Mary passed away at the age of 53 in London due to brain cancer and was buried in a family tomb in Bournemouth, UK. The whole series of my life appeared to me as a dream. I sometimes doubted if indeed it were all true, for it never presented itself to my mind with the force of reality. This was the story of Mary Shelley, at least for this time. Have you read any of Mary's work? I would be curious to learn more about your experience with Mary Shelley in the comments below. Thank you for watching. See you next time.